Oh, yeah, put that on.
Gotcha. Just like right here or something, or?
Yeah.
Men's basketball is at home Saturday night at 6:30 p.m. as they host Florida International as a part of the Conference USA WAC Challenge. This has been your Thunder 91 Sports. I'm Dallin Richards. Go Thunderbirds.
Welcome to tonight's main event.
Where's the Friday?
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious...
On this blessed Friday, let us give thanks.
So, another Friday is upon us.
WTF? Where's the Friday? I'm Rob Birdsey. Welcome to my show. This is the last interview I'll do for today. And I have an interview with Pulsipher, and we're going to get into, man, what a tricky life. You know what I mean? This guy is very inspiring in so many ways. And I dare you to stick around to hear all of it. Because there's just so many things we're going to unlock in this one. But anyway, go to YouTube, check us out at Widowed, Trio, and Freedom. So Widowed, I'm a widowed dad. Trio, I have 2 little boys, and I'm doing this for the freedom. So hopefully we can get that going. Appreciate that. Yeah, Paul, welcome to my show. How you doing?
Thanks for having me on. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, no, it's a great time. We've been talking for a little bit and getting into what you've gone through in life, man. Your life has been super tricky, right?
Yeah, to put it lightly, yes.
Yeah. Let's start with how old are you now? You're close to my age,
38.
right? You're 38. Okay, so you're not so much close, but you're there. Coming back to school, you've did a bit of a life change here, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of many, yeah.
What are you achieving so far in school? What are you getting out of this?
So here at SUU, I'm a commercial music major, which it was super fun to be on, Battle of the Bands last week with you guys, and I go a little bit into kind of like the musical side of my life experience, but here at SUU, I have been just working on my commercial music major in addition to my associates in music recording technology from Salt Lake Community College. Yeah, just kind of getting into the mix behind, like kind of between being the guy, like quote unquote, the guy in the chair in the studio versus the performer versus the songwriter, kind of trying to combine all that stuff into one with, what I'm learning here at SUU, and it's been a really rewarding experience so far with that.
Yeah, that's way cool. What made you come back to school though? Like, what was it? What what were you doing before?
Short answer: God has been in my life.
Yeah.
But to kind of be more fair with that answer, it wasn't, honestly. It wasn't in my plans. God's plan has always been better than mine for me. As you know from our previous conversations, I'm a religious person, and I was actually driving Uber several years ago up in Salt Lake, and I saw one of those billboards that said, college, yes. Debt, no. No, it's not impossible. It's slick. Like one of those little advertising things. And I looked at it, and I felt like in the moment God was telling me, "Hey, you should go there." I'm like, "Wait, what? For what? What am I going to do there? I don't know anything about the school." And my wife Colette had said, "Well, she looked it up. She goes, they have a music recording technology program." And I'm like, "Oh. Well, I like that kind of stuff," so I went for it.
Yeah.
Totally not, wasn't even on the table. I didn't have any plans for that stuff. And then so I finished my associates there, and I thought, okay, great. 2 years of that done. I had started my music business up in Provo, and I thought, well, I'm kind of gaining a little bit of traction here, so I'll just keep that up. And kind of off to the side, I was like, almost comically, like, what would happen if I went and finished the rest, just kind of searching for schools, kind of like, oh, what would it be like if I went here, right? But once you contact the school, you're in the system, right? And they contact you over, and so they sent me an email. It was late spring, early summer, the year before I started here at SUU, and hey, you should join our marching band. And I was like, oh, I did marching band in high school. That was fun. No, maybe, right? I sent it to my wife, like, hey, haha, this would be kind of fun, right? And then she said, actually, one of those divine signals, I feel like we're supposed to go there all of a sudden. I'm like, wait, what? Once again, I'm like, why? I wasn't serious. She's like, I think we're supposed to go down there. I'm like, okay, God, are we doing this again? Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's really why I came down here, and I was attracted to their master's in music technology, which, once again, his plan. I'm not doing that anymore, apparently, based on our conversation I had with the commercial music program, Dr. Tibbs here.
Uh-huh.
And Dr. Tibbs had told me that he thought I would do well in Nashville professionally. I'm like, oh, well, thanks for giving me a big head. Like,
Nashville, Tennessee?
yeah, and I was like shocked at first. I'm like, okay.
Do you sing
right.
country?
No.
Oh.
I am not a country guy.
What would you do there?
Like kind of contemporary Christian, but Dr. Tibbs had told me, because I doubted him at first, right? And he's like, well, no, you're contemporary Christian style. The radio stations over there would love you. You'd make a killing. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll trust you. And I walked out of his office thinking, well, thanks for the confidence boost, I guess. Nothing more than that. But then, once again, I felt one of those little divine signals. I told him to say that. I'm like, are we doing this again?
Oh, wow.
So, no, it's kind of been a roller coaster ride for me. None of it has been really what I planned for my life.
Right.
But, I mean, it's worked. So.
Yeah, and it's been quite a life. So with, I'll touch on a little thing. Like you say, God spoke to you and you needed to go to school, right? But the thing that triggered that was the billboard, right?
Yeah, the billboard and the email. And so it's just like...
The little triggers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they point you in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
I had the same sort of thing coming here. 2 summers ago, my boys were doing like the Shakespeare Kids thing, and then they did the basketball coaches stuff, and so I got acquainted with the school, so to speak. But I never had a thought of coming back to school. I didn't have that thought. I'm just going to go grind out whatever I'm going to try and do. But then it was like driving past one day. I had a couple of instances where things weren't going good, and I kind of got ripped off here with a couple of customers, and I was like, oh man, this is not good. But I drove past here on the way home. I'm just getting ripped off I drove past the school, which I don't usually do too much, and then I could almost promise you that as I was driving past, it was glittering or shimmering or shining or lit up. And I was like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
I think I just need to go walk through that place. You know what I mean? And then I did, and then here I am. And I'm so thankful for it. It's just been an absolute blessing to be able to do what I'm doing right now. Sit with people like yourself. So it's fun to see those little magic moments of God being in your life, moving things around, or the universe, or however you want to say it.
It's like his chessboard in front of him, and I feel like he has all the moves already planned out. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, is this where we're going now? Okay,
Yeah, I think as always, I don't know if it's always planned out. I think that the roads that we turn down, they're options we can have.
Yeah, of course. Like he takes our choice into account.
And then things will prevail. But so so this is you. You're talking about your wife being here, but she's a fairly new wife, right? When did you guys get married?
Actually, weird. I won't go into the whole thing, but it was in the middle of 2020, right in the middle of COVID.
Oh wow,
when
what
it
a
was
time!
like at its, everybody is home, everything is canceled.
Don't look at us. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So
like, we're gonna do this anyways.
Yeah. How long you guys dated for, and how did you guys meet?
Once again, something I didn't plan for. Neither of us planned for this, but I had just, so I guess we'll work backwards here, but we had met Leap Day of 2020.
Okay.
I had been on the Facebook dating app, and for those who maybe listening to this who know me, like that like the year before, my late wife Lorraine had passed away, and I was just kind of like, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm like, I'm a 33-year-old widower. I thought at first, if I ever get back into the dating game, big if, I'm like, I don't know how this works. This awkward phase of life.
And that was a change of life for you. You were married for 10 years, right?
Yeah, we'll get into that later too.
Yeah, we're coming into that.
Yeah, but so I filled out this Facebook dating profile. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna like toe dip here, see what this is about. I don't know what it's gonna end up, right? I didn't know how this was gonna go. And then and Colette found me. She hearted my profile on Facebook, and I know you plan on talking about this later, but just to touch on it, being on the autism spectrum, I thought, who wants to marry an autistic guy who's a 33-year-old widower? It's like kind of a weird age.
Yeah.
And so she hearted me, and I'm like, wait, no one ever hearts me first. I am the awkward kid in high school.
Yeah.
Like, no one ever does that. So I'm like, who is this person?
Yeah.
And so I looked at her profile and, and hers, basically said Jesus is number one. I'm like, oh, that's me. We need to talk, right?
Okay.
And so we met Leap Day. We said to each other, let's just take it slow. I'm like I said, I'm toe dipping. Yeah, let's take it slow. I'm fine with that. And then just once again, divine signals. Like, we both felt like several things happening that was like, wait, maybe, do we need to take this like faster than we were planning? So we did. Like Lorraine, Colette, when I had met her, like she had kind of researched me on social media and found like information about I was married to Lorraine before, and she said that with kind of some of her spiritual gifts on the surface here, I guess that she felt actually Lorraine from the other side, like saying, I approve. Yes.
Connect the dots.
He needs to be happy. I approve. Pursue him. He will love you for who you are. But, faster, please. God has things he needs you to do. And we're like, wait, what? Once again, like, oh, okay. Like, so yeah, we were married May 22nd of 2020.
It's a quick turnaround.
And both of us were like, my sister kind of teased us. She's like, oh, Provo Standard Time, I see. I'm like, shut up.
and just for anyone that's listening out there don't understand the whole Mormon way of life, it's usually you'll meet a person and then a week later you'll be dating that person, and then maybe 3 months later
it's frequent.
you're probably already married.
I wouldn't say like, I'd say that I would guess that maybe happens like half the time. So more frequent than everybody else, but yeah.
Half the time? What do you mean?
Like, kind of like in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there is kind of like this, that happened kind of fast thing. And I would say like in the general LDS population, that does happen about maybe half the time, especially in Provo, which is why my sister said.
It'd be more than half, my friend. It's a statistic. Yeah, I mean, it's
I don't know
usually like a 3
statistics officially,
month.
but that's just been my perception. So
It's usually around about, I think it's, don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure, last time I checked into it, it was like a 3 month turnaround from meeting someone to marrying them.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I'm not going to touch into that too much, actually.
That's fine.
But the one thing about it is that you knew, and what you felt was dating Colette now was way different than dating Lorraine, right?
far different, yeah.
Yeah. So it's two quite opposites situation versus who they were as people and how they treated you in the past. So it's from Lorraine to you. Now, I'm not saying that all love is the same, because I don't think it is. I think we fall into love and we fall out of it, and sometimes we get to choose.
Every person is different. Yeah.
We're all different. But you had quite a run with Lorraine, and throughout your 10 years with her, that kind of spiraled out of control in many ways, and the wheels are kind of falling off the bus a little bit.
Yeah. It was complicated.
It's complicated, and the reason why I want to touch on this, and then to everybody out there that's listening to this, is like this happens more frequently than we know. Okay, it's when we get lonely, sometimes we get desperate, sometimes we just want to feel loved, sometimes we want to feel accepted, and the closest way to that is, I mean, the other strongest emotion to that is being with someone intimately. So coming from where you were with meeting Lorraine, she was from Canada and you were from Colorado at the time, is that right?
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to build this timeline up for people to understand. You guys had the distance, which kills so many things, or it makes things speed up real quick.
Yeah, it's like we want to be together, or this isn't working.
Yeah. Some people don't take the time to see the red flags. And we touched on this yesterday. We were talking a little bit. I just wanted to understand your world. It sounded, you guys were chit-chatting, long distance, and she would say to you a lot, oh, if you were just here, or if we were just together, right?
Yeah.
When in 9 times out of 10, in my book, that's a red flag. I firmly believe.
Yeah, and I was, at the time, I was like, early 20s. I had just gotten finished with a mission for my church, and I was like,
fresh.
I knew her from the mission, but like one of the reasons I know we had fallen in love was because, like we had seen enough of each other's soul to know, like, I know who this person is underneath all the garbage, and that's who I love. So the distance, that's one of the reasons why for us, the distance like was a motivator instead of I don't know if this is gonna work, because like I know who this person is, regardless of how far away they are from me. So
Sure. That man, I feel like sometimes that gets watered down or hidden in other aspects.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened in your scenario. I mean, I don't quote me on none of this
to
I
a
don't-
degree. Yeah.
To a degree, sure. But there was that factor of anyway. You guys got together, but do you feel like that whole relationship you were whole and complete, or do you feel like wheels are falling off the bus and some bits were missing?
I think it was kind of both.
Yeah.
Honestly, we were both in a process throughout the entire time, I can honestly say, of becoming the better version of ourselves.
Sure.
Through all the garbage, right? There's a lot of times where, yeah, we had to kind of pick things up and rebuild, and that happened several times throughout our marriage. But through that picking up, each time we learned something new about ourselves and about each other that was like, no, we need to keep fighting for this.
Yeah.
Because the personal transformation through the whole process, which I actually wrote a song about, maybe I can share that later, but
Sure.
you know, just the idea of we're learning better who we are through the garbage, which is a personal choice you can make or not, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's harder than others, admittedly, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of what was happening, I think, the whole time with Lorraine and I. It was, man, this is just perpetually hard. It's just
Yeah.
always hard. But the hard changed. It became, over time, easier to bear.
Learning how to deal with it.
Yeah. Like we learned some lessons about adulting that really someone in my the way I was in my 20s, you don't learn those kind of life lessons until you're like in your 50s sometimes. The kind of stuff I was experiencing, right? So it's crazy like that, but it was good.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple of relationships that were similar. I mean, obviously they're different because we are different people. But the one thing about when I met my wife, there was nothing that I had to fix within her, and there was nothing that she had to fix within me.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
enhanced each other. You know what I mean?
Yep.
She brought things out of me that I never knew. There was a softer side to my heart that now I live in because of her.
That's awesome.
So we came together and our situation for each other was an add to scenario. And that's where I think and that led us, we got led down the road of, at that stage, we didn't have to worry about walking, we could run. We could go do anything and we could support each other fully, you know, which I think is such a powerful thing to be a part of. Sure, we have some disagreements, and sure, we had maybe a little bickering argument. Not even bickering.
Every marriage, right?
Well, they have them, but there's a right time and a place.
Yeah, exactly.
And it has to be filled with loyalty and love and respect, even at times when you don't feel those strong emotions.
Yep.
But we never had, we always had a great, man, I would make her laugh so much. You know what I mean? And she'd make me laugh just as much.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they were good scenarios, you know. That versus my first marriage, which we never argued, so to speak, but we did have confrontation, and we were never intimate. You know what I mean? And that led me down.
That transparency seems like it wasn't always there.
It was horrible, horrible. Only to find out that afterwards it just wasn't great. Period.
Yeah.
You know, and I wish her well. I really do, actually. I really do wish her well, and I'm glad that we're not a part of each other's lives, because it was a different scenario. Meeting Annie, my late wife Annie, just changed and rocked my world, because I never knew what a great exchange of a relationship could be like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having that in a scenario is phenomenal.
Yeah. And that's what the best marriages are made of, is like learning from each other.
Yep.
But also be like kind of figuring out what it really means to be transparent.
Yep.
And creating an atmosphere where you feel safe being transparent.
Yep.
So
Yeah, no, I know. It's to have that and to go through it. So as the chinks in the armor are falling off in your first marriage, things are going down a bit of a rabbit hole for yourself. There's a couple of things, and I want to touch on this. And yeah, it's not an easy subject to talk about, right? But the thing is, especially within, I mean, any walks of life, but the LDS Church, a lot of members, they have addictions to porn, right?
Yeah.
And
There was one bishop in Hamilton and in Ontario, Canada, where I was, that said, for that area, he's like, if I could have a line of every person he's ever talked to that have come and said, I'm struggling with porn, Bishop, help me out, the line would be out of his office all the way down the hall.
Yeah.
And it's like,
And some.
Yeah. And it's a societal problem too. Like all of society, like I can give you statistics, but maybe I could do later if you want, but.
Well, there's a couple of things that go into that, and statistics are fine to have, but and I'm not I love the LDS Church, I'm not trying to rip on it at all, but there is some factors in play that don't necessarily help people in scenarios, I suppose. As you grow up, you're super curious. You do things. Where I grew up as a kid, I probably was sexually active at the age of 14 or something like that, with exposure way before that, So to explore your body with someone else in that way it's an intimate scenario, and you start learning it. But the LDS Church, you don't do any of that. You cannot. It's like
abstinence, no masturbation, no porn, no any of that stuff before marriage.
Absolutely forbidden. The number one, you cannot do.
Yeah.
Hard lines.
We call it law of chastity. Yeah.
Hard lines, law of chastity.
And we view that as a safeguard for reasons actually you'll hear about from my own life when we get more into this. But yeah.
I'll touch on it from my view.
Yeah.
Right? And then you can share some of yours. I think that would be great.
Cool.
My second marriage with my wife, Annie, which was absolutely awesome. I'm not going to get into details because I just respect that woman so much. Awesome. She meant a lot to me. But there was issues where for us in our own, I'm just like, dude, let me do everything to you. Let me do all things. Let me do whatever. It doesn't matter. Let the roof's off. Let's go. But for her, it wasn't necessarily. She had such a hard time being intimate, having intimate properties. It would just come to. I mean, even when we were in public, she would feel awkward if I tried to kiss her or all sorts of things, just little crazy things like that. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm a red-blooded man. You need to show me your love. You know what I mean? I want to feel this. Exactly. But she would have, and she would go to therapy about it and talk. We would talk a lot about things like that. And it was such a hard thing to get out of her head, being through the church her whole life. And the songs that they would sing, and it was just like, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't do it. Oh, you're married? You can do it. Go right ahead. And it just changes, and it flips things up. It's not. I don't think it's a healthy balance. Do I believe in the law of chastity? I think there's so much power in that. I think there needs to be a time and a place. You know what I mean? I don't know if the Greeks got it right because they had different systems in place, but there's ways of doing things, and I feel like it was a disservice towards her, and that was probably the only thing that lacked in our marriage. Everything else was bulletproof, and even us when we were intimate was amazing too. Like I'm not saying that she was a prude or anything. She was not, but
and one of the things that too I think society lacks today is like. The willingness and ability to talk about these things. Like it was on Facebook the other day, I saw that thing that said the reason we have trouble talking about sex, religion, and politics is because we've been trained not to talk about sex. Like we need to do it to get good at it. Get to talk about these things.
So therefore, it branches off. Now I don't know what the statistic is. The statistics are of women in the church looking at porn are. There probably is. There probably isn't.
Yeah. Well,
I have no
know
idea.
Fight the New Drug has statistics about just general that it is definitely not just a guy problem.
What was that?
Like Fight the New Drug. I know they have statistics, so just generally speaking, that it is definitely not just a guy problem.
Okay, cool. Because we're naturally curious. We're so curious, and I dare say I'm going to hypothesize right here in front of you, and I'm going to say you never had experience with a woman first to see a woman's body or anything like that.
In person, no.
In person, so you got it firsthand from porn, is that correct?
The unhealthy source, yes.
There you go. So what does that set up for you for later on in life?
So I guess I'll get started with that part. The part where it started for me, I think, is something that's important for everybody to pay attention to, is because a lot of times it looks innocent at first. For me, it was just this. I had a cousin from California and their family who were on the way somewhere else. They were visiting. They had this camper. I had never seen a camper like that before. I'm like, oh, what's that? Like, can I just go inside? I mean, it was nothing special. It was like back in the 90s, I think it was. you know, little tiny camp trailer they're taking with them somewhere else. And, you know, having grown up in California, they were used to kind of like, you know, the beach, they've seen beach bodies, they've seen swimsuits, like it's just kind of how the environment they grew up in. Me growing up near the mountains, like my parents live 45 minutes away from the tallest flat top mountain in the world. And so you know, that just wasn't something we saw every day. And so there's this magazine I noticed in his little camper, you know, People, it wasn't like anything like quote unquote pornographic, like People magazine, Glamour, or something like that. And I saw these swimsuits in there, and my childhood brain, oh, that's bad, you know. My cousin, dude, it's just swimsuits, relax, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, you know, my 8-year-old wheels start like, oh wait, what?
Spinning,
What's
spinning
going on
hard.
here? Like, curious, like, well, what is it? Why is he saying that? Like, my parents taught me differently, right? And for me, I will tell you right away, it was the curiosity came from a cultural thing. I don't like small towns anymore because of my experience with them. Because like in the small town we lived in, it wasn't just a church thing. It was the entire town had this mentality of, oh, these are just things, you know, kind of like what's the movie We Don't Talk About Bruno? I think it's was it Encanto? I think it was.
Yeah,
it was that
Encanto,
kind of
yeah.
attitude. We just
Yep.
don't talk about this stuff, right?
Yep.
And the small town we don't talk about it kind of thing was what really like, well, therefore I want to know more, right? And so I'd go searching for it. Back in the 90s, when I was growing up, it was, you know, harder to get it. You had to go with your mom to the grocery store, which I did, and oh, I want to go look at the skating magazines. Lie. And it's, you know, and so I try and kind of, you kind of have to be sneaky about it, right? Today with, you know, how much YouTube's exploded, you don't have to be sneaky about it, which is kind of scary.
Very.
And so like from that point on, like throughout my teenage years, it was just every chance I could get to figure out what I was too scared to ask my parents because of this small town culture. It kind of sent me on that spiral. And, you know, got into things in high school and private that I knew were it just made me feel icky. And I'm like, something about this just tells me I shouldn't be doing it. And, you know, it caused problems even socially with peers in high school, with my family, caused a lot of secrecy, just things that I regret to this day. And I think some regrets are healthy to have, you know, oh, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I think there's some things that we should, you know, say, oh yeah, I wish I wouldn't have done that because it's objectively bad, like, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that was kind of like my growing up years, was trying to, I shouldn't be doing this, but I'm too scared to tell mom and dad. And it took her catching me in the grocery store one day to kind of turn things around. And
What were you looking at?
Was
it just like swimsuit model
yeah,
stuff?
it was like a magazine.
So a bit of skin on a
something
woman?
similar to like Sports Illustrated
Okay.
swimsuit issue or something like that.
But that had been triggered. Now you know there's a different way of life.
Yeah. And so it's, you know, then I got cleaned up enough, you know, morally speaking, to go and serve a mission for my church. Got back home, didn't have any problems after that for a little while.
So you just brushed over a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
When was your first exposure to actual porn?
Probably, I don't know, like a week or so after that encounter with my cousin when I was about 8, roughly.
Okay.
Internet porn, you know.
Yeah.
Just went and searched for it. My parents had, you know, early 90s, they had just kind of, and they gave us, funny thing, they gave us actually a little, like, quote unquote talk about, we're getting the internet, you know, back when it was dial-up, you know, like this is things to be careful for, right? You know, they even did that talk about radio, like, you know, back when, you know, AM and FM, it was kind of like AM has some stuff on there that's questionable. And I actually questioned that. I'm like, AM is just like talk radio back then. I'm like, I don't even like this. Why would I even care about AM? But they had several talks with us about proper uses of technology, which every parent should have with their kid, you know?
Yeah.
Different paradigm back then, of course. Things have changed since then a lot. But yeah, that was kind of the catalyst, and it just sent me down the spiral throughout my youth years. And
So on the regular, I just want to set the parameters up. I'm not trying to flog a dead horse. And I commend you even to speak about this, man, because right now
more people need to.
You're
right?
being a face of something that's extremely hard and things that we go through, man, and you're just by yourself. I have a different view on porn and things like that than what you do, because I had a different way of life.
Everybody does, yeah.
But so on the regular, as a kid, you're 8. Let's just bump you up to around like 12, 13 years old, where things really get kicked in. At that point there, how much are you looking for it?
I'd probably say once a week,
Okay.
a
Okay.
few times a month.
Sure.
When I could, get enough privacy away from mom and dad to do so.
But then, and rightly so, right? And at that stage now, you know where to find it, and you know that you're very curious about it, which is normal for a kid. And anyone else that's gone through that too, don't think that you're a horrible person. You're not.
There's a difference between guilt and shame. Guilt is I did bad. Shame is I am bad. You're not bad for having, these developing sexual curiosities and impulses. It's what you do with them. That's the key, right? So.
Well, it's
if you're going to get yourself in trouble with people and abusing people, and and I actually can get into later on if you want neurological research that's been done about what exactly porn does to your pleasure center of your brain at that age, especially. It's kind of creepy.
go for it.
Oh, right now? Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
So there was, and I did actually some research on this myself. Like I'm 38 years old now. I've done literally decades of research on this myself as well.
Yeah.
There's a neuro researcher called Simone Kuhn is her name. She's a German neurological researcher, and she did a lot of research on the effects of porn. You can find more about this on Fight the New Drug. They have a docuseries called Brain Heart World.
Fight the New Drug, that is.
Yeah.
Fight the New Drug,
Yep.
guys. Yeah.
And you look on their docuseries called Brain Heart World.
Okay.
And she's on there. She talks about this. So what happened, and she actually made a hypothesis that, in porn users, the pleasure center of the brain should be more active, more developed, more, able to function better, right? And on these brain scans that she was seeing of these people who were very heavily involved in porn use, what was happening is this hijacking of the pleasure center in the brain. These rushes of dopamine would overwhelm that pleasure center so much, those neurological pathways, it would actually be too much at once because of this sexual high they're experiencing. And therefore, because of this overwhelming amount of chemical flow to that center of the brain, the next time, I'm too tired to do this again. And it would function less and less effective over time. And the pleasure center physically shrank in intense porn addicts. It actually got smaller. It got less efficient, which is why...
Because they're extracting
which is why over time, a lot of porn addicts tend to seek for more and more deviant content because the softcore stuff isn't cutting it anymore. Your pleasure center...
Next level stuff.
It's my pleasure center isn't responding to this anymore because it's getting weaker. Okay. It's not getting stronger.
Okay.
So that's what the brain scans that she saw were showing, and I'm like, I'm proof of that. It happened to me.
Okay. I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to bring you back
Yeah.
to, you said a quote is, it's okay to feel things, it's just what you do with those feelings makes the difference, right? What I'm going to touch a little bit on this, and I'm going to wrap it up in a different way. Man, this is heavy, so I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
But let's put the church says the same thing to people that have gay tendencies, right? If you think that you're gay or if you might be gay. And I hate to even go down this road, but you know what? It is what it is.
I'm not an expert on it, so I can't speak much to it.
And I know, and no, I'm just shedding some light of, I have friends that are gay.
Yeah. I have an uncle who is,
that are a part of the church, and he has a really hard time coming in and out of the church because he wants to be there, but he also wants to live a healthy life for him.
Tough dichotomy, yep.
Man, you know what? For me, my stance on it, do what you want to do, man. Do what makes you happy. As if you don't force it onto me, I'm good, and you can have your way of life. That's great. You know what I mean? But the church tries to tell people, well, it's not right. Even though you have these things, you shouldn't act on them. You know what I mean? So they accepted him back into the church, and he sang for the Mormon Tabernacle. He's got a pretty good career, the whole lot. Now I think he has left since then, but he had to struggle with that. And I think what gets confused in the tendencies, as you say, man, yeah, sure, you have it, but you know what? We're natural curiosity little beings. We want to work at it. We're here at school to learn other things. We go through life and, look at that, check that out. You know what I mean? There's so many things that we get curious about. We have a number one driving force inside of us is to reproduce ourselves, right? Reproduction is a major factor.
It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah. You can think your way through things, and that's a different animal. you can mate your way through scenarios, and that's a different, and to bring those two together is the hardest thing possible. You know what I mean? Because it's some people think with this, some people think with that. So as a kid growing up, and it's acting on your actions versus not. If there was a better structure in the church and in our schools to understand the opposite bodies, do you think that would have been different for you?
I don't think it was a church issue, honestly.
Oh, no,
But
but-
like the difference that you're talking about, I don't think that was what would have made the difference as much as just if I had been born, like if I had been raised in a different place, or with a different just general social paradigm of what parenting is supposed to look like. I mean, my parents, I'm going to tell you this right now, they did really good.
Okay.
With what they had, they did a fantastic job.
Okay. And I'm not just saying that this
yeah.
is a church issue or a parenting issue.
But to answer your question, I don't think a huge difference in church approach for me would have made
Yeah.
a difference. I think the issue is that in my case, it was more a matter of, I just grew up in a culture, dependent or independent of the church either way, that just didn't like talking about certain things. And if I had, like today, like you hear, I've seen posts like from psychologists, which I love when I see this stuff, where they're like, don't have the talk, have talks.
Yes,
Right?
multiple.
Yeah,
Plural.
like create an environment where your kid, when they have questions about tough things, they know that you are a comfortable person to talk to about this.
Yep.
And back in the 80s and 90s, that just wasn't a societal thing at all, in or out of the church, right?
Yep.
It wasn't like overall worldwide. I don't think it was a thing.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's kind of, if I had had that difference, what the church had probably would have helped more. If society in general just wasn't as, in this, buried their head in the sand, what the church had would have helped more if, culture in general wasn't so much in those small towns about, there's certain things we just don't say. That was more the issue for me. What the church has, I think, like in my later years of addiction, it did help. But
Sure.
not because, of the church, but because I was just in a different place. I was in a different
But by
culture.
then, the habitual side of life had kicked in,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah,
where you
yeah.
needed the help.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to condemn anyone. I don't know if there's one way to life that's better. I do like
And I know people have quit cold turkey without religious help. I know it's possible, and I love that. For me, I needed the divine help, and everyone's different. So.
Yeah. I'm just going to put my monkey brain on for a second,
Please.
and just share my light of what I think about porn and things like that. I know I have friends that actively together they watch porn and then they do their thing. You know what I mean? That's great, and it works, and there's a healthy place for that. I've asked him, have you? Do you go out of your way to rather look at porn than with her? He's like, nah, I don't really care about it. I'll just do it with her if she wants to watch it. Cool, great, no worries. And that's great, you know what I mean? Myself personally, I've seen a bit of porn here and there, and I'm not gonna deny it.
I think it's kind of impossible to avoid it in society.
There's
it's not if, it's when.
Yeah, it's if and when. For sure. I used it as a tool for myself when I would travel a lot and I wasn't with my family.
Okay.
The one thing that I was doing at the time is I was schmoozing a lot of customers. So I would take them out for dinners, and there would be drinks there and all that sort of stuff. So the environment that I would have laid out for me as a traveling salesperson doing marketing and things like that, it was a tricky scenario because I'm a red-blooded man, you know what I mean, and I'm very, very healthy. I'm very active with my partner. Well, at the time, my wife, we were extremely active whenever we could be, but I was gone from Monday to Friday. So for me to be somewhere and go out for drinks and stuff, I would always be exposed to many women. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for me to be able to, it wasn't a hard thing for me to say no, because I would just go back to the hotel room. I'd call my wife up and we would chat, or I would watch some porn and get the demons out, so to speak. And I felt like that was a pretty well-rounded trip as far as using it to calm myself down in ways. I'm sorry to even talk about this, guys. It's crazy. But even my,
There's a conversation we need to have. I
Yeah, I
appreciate you being
know.
open.
It's such
I'll
a-
be just as open too. So.
yeah. My wife would be like, "Oh, porn sucks." You know, anyone that you talk to in the LDS church, everyone hates porn, but who knows who's watching
And I
it,
can
right?
talk more about that later if we want to.
Sure.
Yeah.
And my wife, she stated her claim to it, and I was like, "Hang on a minute, I'm going to explain." And I explained what I just told you guys
Yeah,
now, and she looked at me and she's like, "Huh?" I was like, "What's that for?" And she's like, "Oh, I didn't look at it like that." And I was like, "Yeah, well, that's so I use it, and that's how I use it." And she said to me, "So you don't come home and you don't look at porn versus looking at me?" I was like, "Honey, if I'm home, I'm looking at you. It's all you." You know, and that's what it was. But we had a healthy, loving relationship. You know what I mean? So for me to use porn as a tool versus, you know, as a crux to not having a healthy relationship, which I could see, which happened actually in my first relationship. Things dried up with her and I because we were idiots and shouldn't have been together. Hence, I would go to that for release. You know what I mean? And that was a very unhealthy part of my life. But once having someone that was loving and endearing in my world, and I could, you know what I mean, have the actual product versus looking at it. You know, no, I'm all about the natural.
Yeah.
So, but they're different scenarios. Going from a really unhealthy relationship into a healthy relationship. Let me just fast forward you just for a second, just so we get things cleared up. You're in a new marriage, and that's wrapped around love. Obviously, you got God in your house, and that plays a big factor for you guys. It doesn't sound like you guys argue much.
One of the things, and I will tell you this right now, you don't get that.
Yeah, I do.
Colette and I have not had one single fight in four,
was me and
and
Annie.
a half years.
Yeah.
And
You'll have debates. You'll have talks.
Yeah, and we will like Colette and I. There's certain things that like until even like maybe 6 months ago, like we did not see eye to eye on.
Yeah.
And I think there's some aspects of it we still don't. But the reason we haven't had any fights is because we have this hard, fast rule. We are never, ever going to scream at each other. And we never have. We never scream at each other.
Yeah.
There's never any name calling.
Yeah.
We just choose not to. There's never any insults. It's, you know, it's I feel this way when, you know.
You guys work through it.
You know, like it's just, we choose to be civil. And if emotions get high, like, okay, let's just like take a breath here and like, okay, let's rewind. Okay, let's try this again. Like, what are we feeling here, right? And so, you know, it's just a matter of we just choose not to do things that, you know, would create contention.
Yeah.
And from in our marriage, being completely free from masturbation, from porn, from any of that stuff, it does more for us than I can possibly tell you. Like,
Yeah.
like with the thing I mentioned earlier about hijacking the pleasure center of your brain, right? That even happens to a small extent, and even like what people might call moderated porn consumption. It's not as intense, you know, as, you know, hardcore addicts, of course, but it still happens in every single case, right? Your brain can recover if you know, like that's one of the great things about neuroplasticity, is one of those terms that neuroscientists have been throwing out the last 20 or so years, I would guess, is neuroplasticity, right? As our brains can change. But for me, it's been a matter of, you know, we have absolute sexual fidelity. Like, this is kind of a crass way to say it, but people who say, you know, justification is like masturbation, you're only screwing yourself.
I
Right?
like that.
and it's like, you know, in our church, in our religious beliefs, it's a matter of you are having manual sex with yourself, which is a form of cheating on your spouse.
And pause you right there. You never feel good after this. I mean, yeah, you might get a little bit of relief, but there's always that little part of you like, oh, I just did that, which is not a great thing. You know, it's you feel a little weird.
Yeah. And there's some guys in that, like that docuseries I mentioned from Fight the New Drug.
Yeah.
Who's like when I stopped, they'll say like when I stopped masturbating, when I stopped doing porn, like I felt like, oh my gosh, I can like actually, I'm like once again finally capable even of thinking of the opposite sex in a non-objectifying way. Like, oh my gosh, I'm actually able to do this again. Like I feel normal. It's like, Yeah, because porn and masturbation, often going in tandem with each other, they do the same thing to the pleasure center of the
You're
brain either way.
taxing. Oh, I agree with
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Actually,
so,
I like that statistic. Hey, another thing I want to touch on a different sort of way of life.
Yep.
You got a healthy marriage, right? And obviously you do healthy marriage things. You know, to be intimate with someone on a regular basis that you have a whole heart full of love for them, it's powerful, right? It changes your world.
Yep. There was a guy on my mission who we had talked to about this, and he had, you know, wasn't really religiously minded, but when we talked to him after his wife had their first baby, he's like, oh man, elders, if you ever need someone to help you teach about the value of abstinence before marriage, you can have them talk to me. I saw my child's face for the first time, and I'm like, I'm so glad I waited to do this. I'm like, thanks, man. You know, it's
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, no, well, there's power in that. I mean, it just throughout all of life in general, the things that you do, the hard things that you try, it's a support factor that it's just amazing. It's so beautiful. So it's a good. You probably noticed that too, right? You're doing hard things, man. You're putting your music out there. You've got a website. You're selling songs, right?
Yeah, I'm running my own business here in Cedar City. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. How's that doing for you?
Honestly, considering trying to with kind of the somewhat of a balance I've been trying to strike between that and school, it's actually kind of pretty well.
Yeah.
I've spent the last 2 years kind of getting just a sheer volume of I love doing composition and arranging, so I have like a large volume of like piano originals and arrangements up on Sheet Music Plus and stuff, and I've built up enough of that now where I've had to kind of take a break from it, but it's still actually providing a consistent, little trickle of income, even though I've stopped doing it. I'm like, okay, well, that was a good idea. When I get back out of school, I need to dive forward back in that so I can
plate again.
get that income boosted a little bit more. It's consistent, but it's just like...
When did you start it?
My first semester at Salt Lake Community College.
Okay, so that's earlier.
It was
on
a
in your
business class, and I'm
too.
like, business class, I'll start a business. So I registered it with the state, just gave it a shot, and
off you
worked
go.
my butt off, and it's paying off so far a little bit.
Good, good. And what are you composing music? What do you do?
I write, I do composition, I do arranging, I do like engraving. I've had Emily Summerhays, if you look her up on Spotify, I've done a few sheet music pieces for her, so I charge for engraving.
What do you mean engrave? What's engraving?
Like using digital notation software to actually take a piece from, I recorded the audio, but I want the sheet music, so I do that.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've done that for her.
Okay.
I do songwriting, I do the production side of it too, the recording, the mixing and all that stuff. When I get a chance, if I ever get like a gig or something, like a performance gig or whatever, that's not as frequent for me. I think I've had like 3 of those in the last 2 years. But
oh wow, we're almost done. The reason why I wanted to touch on that is you're a very active person and you do a lot of things through life, right? When I first met you, you wanted to be on the show, and it triggered some alarm bells for me. My first judgment of you, which I'm totally sorry for, because you're a great person. You have some tics, right?
Being on the autism spectrum, yep.
I had no idea about that. You had some tics, and your the way you speak and your cadence of things, you seem like a tweaker, right? And I know.
What do you mean by tweaker? I don't know.
Well, it's like I suppose a drug user, or you know what I mean, like someone.
Oh, I like the little thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I looked at that and I'm like, man, this guy wants to come on my podcast, talk about porn and masturbation and all this jazz. And it just really, I had to, you see me go, I went through the procedures to get you on here. So I really vented you out. And only to realize that, man, it was just vices that were triggered through scenarios that you're in with life. And so you went through hard things in life. You're on the autism spectrum. Now, I'm going to break it down for you guys. Sometimes I speak a little French from time to time. I don't know if it's French or... Anyway, I'm fluid and I cuss a little bit here and there. And that takes you out of scenarios in your life. And you said to me, you said, hey, please don't do that. And I'm like, oh, wow. And then you explained it that it because
for
of...
Asperger's brain, it's a distraction. If I can't focus on the message because that's distraction to me. Right? I want to focus on what you're saying. So.
And that blew my mind a little bit. And I thought, oh, man, I'm sorry. I owe you more respect than that. So I'm sorry about that. And then we started talking some more, and then I saw the tics, and I asked you, I was like, have you ever done drugs? And what's your
I'm
answer to
not
that?
surprised, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah. What did that?
I've been asked that before.
Yeah, sure. Because that's what, and I've experienced. Like I grew up with people that looked just
Yeah.
like you,
Yeah.
that were actively on
Well,
drugs
and that's
all
one of the
the
reasons
time.
why Fight the New Drug calls their thing Fight the New Drug.
Yeah.
Because porn actually, and they've done
sure.
they've done interviews with people, right, where it's like they were addicted. These people who were addicted to porn and weed or crack or alcohol or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And in every one of those interviews they've done with these people, almost every time they'll say, "Oh, it was so much harder for me to recover from porn than drugs." Because you can detox from drugs, you can change friends, you can avoid bars, but porn is everywhere.
Oh, it's not even that, man. It's like the strongest thing inside
Yeah,
you.
and that too,
we
yeah, we
need to
talked
do
about
that
that before,
as
yeah.
a person, as
Yeah.
a community, as building
Because
out.
like the sexual desires is a part of our biological essentials. So that's why it's so much harder to beat it, because there is an essential part to those impulses, but there's also a destructive side to it if you let it get
Exactly.
that far, right?
Okay, I'm gonna have to wrap this up.
Yeah, yeah.
We just blew through an hour so quick, which was awesome.
Yeah.
I think you were a great chat. I love the view that you do. I just wanted to bring light to people that A, you've never done drugs, you don't drink alcohol, it's very strong in your religion not to do that. So for you to have Asperger's and be on a spectrum and have that in your world, and you're such a high motivational character. Your life all be in it. You know, I commend you on talking here about hard things in life.
I appreciate it.
I'm so thankful for you, and I'm proud that you now have the loving relationship that you've always wanted.
Thanks to
right?
recovery, yeah.
You're going after great things in life. You're spinning many plates, and you're creating music, and you have your own business doing it. Where can we find your Spotify or what are we looking for?
W. Paul Pulsipher is my artist name. You can find my website, the information, my socials are all on pulsipherproductions.com.
And once I get through the edits and things, I'll link up with you, and we'll put a bit of a bio there for you.
Sounds good.
So help your career, and I hope it does.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I hope people
And-
can.
Yeah, and do you mind if I just kind of give one last thing for anybody
Please.
listening here?
Yeah.
If there's anything I want anyone to take away from this, it's that, there are a lot of people who are gonna, have different perspectives on porn. Like you and me have very different perspectives, which is fine. Everybody has their own thing. But I will tell you, one of the best ways to recover from or deal with porn problems is A, not to get involved with it in the first place, which has been my advice. B, if you do fall for that, which doesn't make you a horrible person, it just means you have a weakness, right? I had a weakness too.
Sure.
The other thing is, if you already are into it, you need to find someone. Like, find somebody. Like, if you want to message me, maybe when they put my credentials up there, my contact information, message me. Find someone who you can be comfortable talking about it with, because addiction thrives in the dark.
I love that.
It does. Secrecy, that you don't even know how much damage it's doing to you until you start to, oh my gosh, wow, I was more in trouble than I thought. You don't know it until you're coming out of it. You can't see it clearly.
There are discreet ways to go about it.
Find someone
and
to talk to about
people
it.
will help, especially in the church. There's many people out there that'll help.
Yeah, find someone to talk to about it.
Great. I have. We'll wrap this up now. I have one question, quick answer. What makes the difference
In recovery,
in anything, whatever comes to mind?
this has kind of become a life mantra for me.
Perfect.
Stop asking how good you have to be. Stop looking for a minimum standard. Start asking how good you can possibly be, right? The quote-unquote problem, as one high school friend of mine said, with being good is you have to prove it. It takes proving it. Stop asking how good you have to be. Start asking how good you can be, because if you're always looking for a higher standard, you may not always hit it, but you're going to hit higher than you would have if you'd ever tried.
I appreciate that, man. Right now, we're going to end this, and I appreciate your time. Thank you, Paul, for being here.
Thanks much.
Yeah. Thank you, YouTube. That was a great one. I hope everyone got a good message out of that.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Dude, that was awesome.
Yeah.
That was really